Now, MTNL is an interesting case, and I think at the end of this, because the telecommunications area has been one of our success stories in this country, where allowing the private sector to come in, I think the citizens have benefited. So is there any case at all, or any part of the telecommunication industry in which we should have a publicly owned, that means a exchequer-owned company?
I say yes, because it's not only a strategic importance, but for balancing the market also. And many times government intervention may be necessary for their own policy or for intervention in market due to some reason. The telecom development has, or this development in the sector has been more due to the technology. It has not, I mean, I can definitely say the development or so much enhancement has happened, it has because of change in technology. We cannot say solely that it has been because of the participation by the private industry. No, the digital thing, 0-1 thing which came, that has changed the technology, and that has brought the cheaper products in the market and faster returns in the market. So private participation has succeeded. I don't say that it should be only PSUs or PSEs only. PSEs should be there, and for government it is necessary for balancing the market, and many times for some interventions by them. Their aim need not be making profit, but yes, they can be placed in such a way that PSEs do a job of a leadership job in the market because of no role of profit, no aim of profit, and secondly, the procedures and the transparency becoming better in PSEs.
Okay, so the big question then is, whoever is the public enterprise that is performing that role for the public better be well run. Now, in a private enterprise, that's one thing you stop, isn't it, Adi? That you say, look, my kids and stuff, I've got a professional manager and professional governance. You can have a role on the board, I might give it to you, and you will say what you have to say on the board, but you're not going to run around every day and tell people that because you happen to have the owner's name, you can tell them what to do. But this is the problem, and the study that we did along with them about how do we improve the governance of our public enterprises, this was one of the issues. There were some others also. There was the issue of the vigilance matters. It really affects them. And we came down, there's a fundamental issue here, that our public enterprises are declared as the state in the Constitution. So all the vigilance that's required of things in the state apply to them, even though we are saying they are limited liability companies on the stock market. The deeper issue there. So that's problem number 2. The third one is the appointment of the boards and the chief executives. We say that these are now going to be competing with private enterprises, and they must, get their shares up in competition. And as the private sector has learned that you have a certain required governance structure if you want to be effectively managed and efficient. So in that, the choice of your CEO is one of the important decisions that the board makes, and you be sure that your CEO has sufficient tenure to produce a result. Similarly, you have a good board that can guide the company and the CEO. So the appointment of the board and the appointment of the CEO are very critical decisions to enable these enterprises to function. But we have the situation, why is he wearing 3 hats? Because there is a large public sector enterprise in the minerals area, which you said, and we need to have that, maybe in the state, but it doesn't have a chief executive for 2 years. The appointment of people on the boards are appointed again by the ministries. And many people who have been from the private sector joining, or eminent persons, the boards of these companies, leave very soon to say, like in Air India, I can't influence anything over here. It's all the nephews and nieces, if I can use the term again, so I'm not required over here. So that's problem number 3. Now, a solution to these problems, it's a far-reaching solution perhaps, was mentioned by the Rungta committee, which the Planning Commission had commissioned, and it's in their report, but the government is going to find it difficult to accept that. We said that the idea that you had, that at times you invest because you need to, you should be able to get out of that investment, and if it's business of making things, recover a lot of money, and then use that money to invest in other things which you need as a public. So the idea of a holding company for public sector enterprises. So it's at arm's length from the ministries. Yeah. Okay. So that was an idea which is to there, which will get over the daily management problem. It would get over the appointment of CEOs and the board problem also. It will not get over the vigilance problem unless you change that constitutional definition of our public sector. So I'm going to ask both of you for your responses on what are the one or two big things in terms of changing the governance pattern or institutional pattern that we should do, which would enable a public enterprise, an enterprise that is required to perform a public purpose, to do its job professionally.
I have said that to run a public sector company efficiently, we should have a professionally managed board. Now, what is happening practically in the management of a public sector company in India is there are three constituents of a board. One constituent is of the independent directors, and if a company is having a large number of independent directors, like many companies like SAIL is having about 12 number and all that, even among independent directors also we have one or two constituents, one or two groups. Second constituent is of the government directors. They think they are the owner of the company and company belongs to them. And third constituent is of the functional directors. Of course, they get united because there's the functional management. Now, in a board meeting, that of a big company I'm talking about, or any public sector company I'm talking about, now there's a clash of interest. These three constituents that, government directors always in the back of their mind that it's a government company, they are the owners, they are the owners with no responsibility. They will keep on harping the things, Independent directors, that they'll be, most of the independent directors, they'll be having some agenda of their own and all. I know that I was working in BHL. BHL lost wind turbine business because of the one senior independent director raised certain issues. I don't want to go into those details about the conflict of interest and all that, And then comes the functional management. See that unfortunately what has happened now is the Department of Public Enterprises, they came out with a circular. They say that independent directors will hold an annual meeting to review the performance of the management and the chairman of the company. From the scope platform, I'm the chairman of the scope, we registered. We see that we have to work like a cohesive body, one board, united board, and we are trying to divide the board. And then independent directors, on the selection of whom the chairman used to be a member of the selection committee earlier, till 1 year back. Now independent directors will meet, they will review the performance of the chairman, they will review the performance of the management of the company. Then on our, when we took up the matter very strongly with the Department of Public Enterprises, they changed the circular a few months back. They say no, that they will still meet independent directors. They will see whether there is a proper information flow to see that, the functions is being carried out smoothly. No, I don't subscribe to this. We are trying to divide the boards of the public sector enterprises. So I have said that in the present form, if we run the public sector enterprises, more than half are already sick. Many of them are potentially sick. Many of them are in the pipeline to become sick. Every public sector company in India, in the present form it is run, it will become sick. Now, what is to be done So one important thing which Ms. Maira has raised, and we fully subscribe, and we are taken up from the scope also. See, there has to be a separation from the ownership and the management. And see that today, all the ministries, they don't have any role to play. What is the role of the Steel Ministry to run the Steel Authority of India? Steel is a deregulated item. I had to produce steel. I had to sell steel at the market price. What is the role of the Ministry of Power in power sector companies? What is the role of other telecom and all in running the telecom service providers? So there has to be a separation of ownership and the management. And the holding company concept is we are, from the scope side, we are strongly recommended and we are suggested to start with, because we had to make a change by evolution, not by revolution. So to start with, let all the Maharatna and Navratna companies in India, which is 25 number, let there be a holding company. The board of the holding company will be consisting of the professionals, or and they will decide. And these holding, these 25 number of companies, they will become the subsidiary company of the holding company. They will not come under any individual ministry. They will come under the administrative control of the Department of Public Enterprises. The holding company in the beginning of the year, they will set the targets of the individual subsidiary companies. To start with, we recommended only Maharatna and Navratna, which is only 25 number. And then on a quarterly basis, they will review the performance against the targets which have been given to the subsidiary company. So there's a separation of ownership and the management, so that there's a greater autonomy to be given to the public sector companies. Because see that today, the way we are running it, a lot of interference which is happening, that I mean, many people may accept, many may not accept. Sitting at the helm of the affairs, we know what happens, but not happens. I mean, if we continue to run the affairs like this, if we don't intervene, believe me that every 80% profit of the profit-making companies coming only from the 10 PSUs, and which are again sitting on the monopoly, like I'm holding the additional charge of NMDC. And as our Coal India Chairman, Mr. Rao was saying, my turnover is 10,000 crore, we earn 10,000 crore profit. But we are sitting on a huge pile of RNO reserves that. So there's a natural resource which we acquired, and not that. Of course, efficiently also I will say that we are running it, our operating cost is $15 per ton, which is the lowest among the iron ore making company in the world. So friends, what I was saying is that in the present shape, there are many ills of the running a public sector enterprise. We have to have more autonomy, more professional freedom to be given, and these things have to be done. Selection of the chief executives and all will be done by the holding company. Today we are having the public enterprise selection board. Now whether they select a chairman of a Maharatna company or whether they select a director of a D group company, is the same board which will go into. Now see that when you are selecting a chairman of a Maharatna company, let there be some outside experts and all that, I mean, they should have the knowledge of the subject and all that when you are choosing a chairman and all that, We cannot have the same criteria. I mean, 229 PSUs are there, and all the board level position, including the chairman, including chairman of a Maharatna company, same board is meeting and all. No, we don't subscribe to this.
This is very passionately put, you can see that. Thank you. From the chairman of Scope, on behalf of all the public sector undertakings, he's saying this. So you were the chairman before. I want your views also. You spent quite a lot of time, you've been quite outspoken also on this matter.
I would say that there are a couple of issues in sort of the institution mechanism by which we run what is called today the public sector companies. The first one could be the ownership. There's no clarity as to who owns these companies. As the chairman of the session mentioned, that it is supposed to be owned by the President of India, who exercises his powers through the administrative ministry. The administrative minister exercises a power to the secretary of the department. The secretary exercises through his subordinates. It might come up to the undersecretary level. So you really do not know who owns your company. That's a major issue today, because I have 18 members on my board, and I have been chairman of a public sector. This is 14th year running. I think there is no problem in managing a board. You can easily manage a board, provided you know if the owner is what the owner wants. If Mr. Godrej was my owner, I would probably go and ask him before my board meeting, before I went into real estate business, from what was his core business. And I'm sure the same thing would be expected in a public sector board also, that a company like NTPC cannot suddenly start thinking that we will be manufacturing fertilizers without getting into consultation with the owners. So the problem lies as to who's the owner. And once you identify the owner, is the owner willing to take the responsibility? I mean, if the owner does not want to take the responsibility, and then all the responsibility is yours, and if something wrong happens, then you face the music, then you are in a very difficult situation. So ownership is an issue which is absolutely important, and since we say the ownership comes out from an elected representative, that is the minister who holds the charge of the administrative ministry, I would say that then the confusion arises that as a CEO of the company or the person who's running the company, have you been elected or selected? That's a big question. When you think that you're elected, then you try to please everybody, then you're not running the company. You're not doing justice to it. If you feel you're selected, there's a whole lot of people who are gunning after you, and at that time the owner is not standing with you. So this is the ownership issue is the main thing. The second thing, one more issue I want to make, is the trust. I do not know how many of you know that before one of us who are sitting here is appointed to the position that we have been, there's a scrutiny by CBI, CVC, IB, and what have you. all that scrutiny has been done before your appointment letter is given to you. And the moment you are appointed, if there's a complaint, it goes to the CVC. And you are answering their questions all the time. And believe me, the way the CVC operates or the government operates is that if there is a question against you, it goes to the vigilance of the ministry. The ministry marks it to the vigilance of the company, and the CVO of the company, who administratively reports to you, actually sends a deputy manager of the company, who is your employee, to you to ask questions from you. Now, this is the kind of administrative control that we have today. And believe me, I will give you one more example. Under RTI, somebody asked me that in the last 2 years, how many tours have you undertaken? In which hotel have you stayed? And that was all right, till they asked me as to how much have you spent on food and beverage every day. Now, this is the chairman of a Maharatna company. And believe me, if you go to my website, I put all this on my website. I've told my people, put everything there, where I stay, how much I've drawn as a DA, how much did I spend. Now, we must be clear as to what we want. Are we wanting to run a company? Are we want to run a business enterprise? Or it's an extended arm of the department? As a CEO, I have no problem to accept an owner. But I must know the owner. There should be a face of the owner. The owner should stand by me when I'm in difficulty, and he should have trust on me.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Any ministry, you have two functions. One is so-called the policy-related function, then another is administering the company. Now, if you separate these functions, yes, policy making, so-called policy making, oversight can still be with the ministry. Obviously, somebody has to be responsible for that. But managing or supervising oversight of the company, if you really divorce that, large number of the problems would be sorted out. In whatever manner, it's not occasion for us to discuss. Second, while largely agreeing with my colleagues what they have mentioned, now here's a problem, because there is a problem with the government, there's also a problem with everything else. I blame them, they blame us. Ultimately, there is also an issue of accountability on the company. Now, in the process, because it is everybody's responsibility, it's nobody's responsibility, I don't think any CEO has been hanged for not performing. Ultimately, it is the 1.2 billion people of this country who are suffering. We may be blaming each other. End of the day, I have 100 reasons why I'm not performing. Then somebody else will say they have 100 reasons why they are interfering. But are we responsible to the sovereign nation or not? What are the accountability issues that has been put in system where they should be called upon to say you have done or you have not done or anything? So it's like we are, at the end of the day, we are all friends and getting away with it.
Yeah, so as you say...
Just 1 minute, I want to make one point here, I think, with Nasim Rao said, exactly what I was saying. If you're a non-performing CEO and you don't perform, you're the best CEO as far as the government is concerned.
Okay, I think we were talking about the owner and the manager and the relationship between them, and seeing the face of the owner and being able to discuss what do you want me to do with this company and the investment that you have here. So therefore, the idea of the holding company is an attractive idea. It puts you at arm's length from the departments, maybe just the Navratna companies. There's a person who will be accountable. The holding company is going to be judged also by how much Singapore has these, other countries have these, the Middle East has these holding companies of government assets. So we could make it more professionally managed.